And there is an old idea that says when the world is in trouble, there's an acceleration of calling. So the idea of calling also tells us that what is written on the walls of the soul, what makes a person unique, is not simply intended for themselves. It's actually intended to be given somehow to the world. And that's what the calling does. The calling doesn't make a person special. The ego thinks that. The calling makes a person more possibly a channel for the gifts and the talents, the healing and the compassion and so on to come through. And that becomes part of the calling. The calling isn't just to succeed. The calling has to do with awakening, and it has to do with being more present, bringing presence to the world. At least that's my understanding. So since the inner genius is connected to the uniqueness of the soul, the calling comes to each person uniquely. So I know there's lots of diagrams of the, how the journey should go and all that. But I think what happens is the uniqueness of each soul is a profoundly important thing. And so the calling comes in unique ways. And like I was saying earlier, someone can awaken, but it doesn't mean they can give their awakening to someone else. So the calling comes at a time when it chooses to come. The calling is connected to the original soul, and which is timeless, comes from the other world, the timeless place. And so therefore the calling can come at any time. And when I'm saying that, I'm thinking of the troubled world we're in. And one of the things going on in this troubled world is that in some cases, and more so in some groups of people than others, people are living longer and longer. And you could imagine that maybe the world is trying to create more elders because we need more elders, because elders bring wisdom rather than policies. And so it's important, I think, to have the idea a calling can come at any time. The calling is so important, it keeps calling. So even if we forgot, and even if we denied and refused and didn't respond to a meaningful call early on in life, or even through many decades of life, the calling keeps calling. It has nothing to do with age. Well, it does a little bit have to do with age. You have to be not a child. But it has nothing to do with growing older, and it has nothing to do with time. It's actually a call of the timeless to a timeless thing in us. And so I'm just emphasizing the calling keeps calling. And so the idea that there's an original sin, or even that when you make a mistake, you're ruined, not in terms of this dynamic of the soul. The calling keeps calling. And the calling is an awakening of what's already inside us. And so anyway, it seems to me calling is way more important at this time. Each person that we're meeting, each person that we love and care for is a recipient of a calling. And therefore each person can awaken and find their own path of healing and awakening, but also help bring awakening and healing to others. So let's see, so that's calling. And then I had mentioned the word talent, and I wanted to say something about it because it's a beautiful word. It means, the capacity to do something, the gift, the ability to do, create, to make, to contribute. But the word itself has actually two kinds of meanings. One is aptitudes and abilities, but the other is talent was the word or the name given to weights that we use to measure gold. So talent is the natural gifts, capacities, and abilities of a person, but also the talent has weight. The abilities and the specific gifts are the gold of the person, but there is also a weight to a talent, so that a talent that is not used can become, instead of a golden thing that shines for everybody, it can become a lead weight that pulls the spirit out of life, that causes a person to be stuck. One of the ways to be stuck is to not find how to use a talent. And this is, again, comes under the sign of the family traumas and the family woundings, also the community woundings. So each child has a genius capacity, a genius thread. Each child has talents intended to be learned about and given. And then when a child or any person is not blessed or recognized for having those, and if they can't find a way because they're trapped inside of traumas or inside of whatever confusions, that talent then becomes a weight and can be the cause of depression. The old meaning of depression was a loss of spirit. And a talent unused is not an opportunity missed, not simply that. It's actually a weight forming inside a person that makes life less vital and less meaningful. So everyone is given talents, and the purpose of the talent is to be given freely to others. And here's another old idea. The more freely we give the gifts that we were given, the old phrase was God-given from the divine, the more freely we give them, it's not that we run out of that gift, it's that that gift increases. So I'm not saying that a person shouldn't, make a living out of their talents and all. That's like a different level. That's a second level agreement to work out. But what I'm saying is talents are intended, gifts are intended to be freely given. And when that happens, because the source of them is timeless and eternal, the talent grows. It doesn't diminish by giving. I hope that makes sense because it's a beautiful dynamic. The point is not to compare one's talents to others and try to measure the size of one's gifts to other people's. Each person is unique. It's not going to matter, really. The idea is to learn to give one's gifts and in the process reveal one's own inner nature. And that's its own reward in a sense. So I'll also say this, just to say it a different way. A talent is intended to be a channel through which the individual person finds vitality and helps creativity to flow into life. Creative energies, knowledge, healing energies are trying to come into the world all the time. And some things can only come through the human dynamic, the human soul. And so we're actually invited to be channels of those things coming in. And when we refuse to do that, the gold in us can turn to lead inside rather than gold, and the world becomes a diminished place. Part of the collective problem right now is the idea of, what did they call that? A consumer society is now in the process of consuming itself. What else could happen? Ancient people would experiment and work with. I'm not saying they did everything right, but they had more access to this genius imagination than we have collectively now. And they would experiment with the gift-giving culture as opposed to the consuming culture. The gift-giving culture, no matter what shape it took, was based on the idea that everyone is gifted. That was the idea behind it. And so the poverty of the modern world is the consumption notion. We're here to consume, to take. And not only that, things are running out. When we tap back into the story that we started with and the idea of each person being gifted, and the gifts are connected to the eternal source behind them, once we begin to tap into those gifts, the abundance of the world returns, and they become ways to go from the collapsing world that we have inherited to a world that has more imagination, more creativity, more forbearance of other people, more attention to becoming conscious of one's self and soul and aim in life, and therefore more acceptance and support for each other.